Vamos a empezar con las charlas de la primera edición de muchas, esperemos, de Guadalindie. Y como seguramente sabéis, el primer ponente, ¿cómo se llama? Era Stuffed Wombat, que tiene una presentación de 150 diapositivas llamada The Making of Mosa Lina. Así que…
Thank you. Okay, nice. Let's check this. Sweet. Hello, my name is Josh. I'm better known as Stuffed Wombat on the internet. I make small games with small teams, which means that there's always a couple of different people helping me with my latest strange obsession. The last of those games is Mosa Lina, which is a puzzle game without solutions. It's a kind of strange thing where normally a game designer gives you a puzzle, and the puzzle is actually just a beautiful picture that has been cut up in many different pieces. And in Mosa Lina, I just take some random paper and throw it at you, and you can do whatever the fuck you want. It looks like this. Yeah, some low frame rate GIFs for you to explain how it works. You're this little person, you have all of these tools, and they all interact with each other because it's all parsed through physics. And then you get just random stuff, and you have the same level, but now you can do a different solution. It's quite a cute thing. And then, some more GIFs. You have all of these bouncing things, and it's this chaotic little piece of game design. So today I'm going to talk about the making of Mosa Lina, which begins. This is a very chaotic, strange, intense story for me. I'm just coming out of the development of the last part. So I'm using this as kind of free therapy. Actually, I got brought here to do therapy, and you're all listening to me. It's very great. Thanks a lot. So this begins in 2021 when I just released a game called Wombat, which is this very pristine thing. It tries very hard to be this super smooth game design thing where every challenge, you get prepared for every challenge in advance. There's no words. It's based on this flow thing, and it's a very smooth thing. And I make this and I release it, and I fall into the void of post-release depression. And then I play a game called Cruelty Squad, which is the absolute opposite of what I've been trying to achieve my whole life with game design. It's just a mess. The game doesn't really give a shit about what you do. It just gives you some level, and then it lets you choose some equipment. And whatever, if you pick the wrong shoes for the wrong level, you're just fucked. The game doesn't care. So I'm like, wow, that's really cool. It's like a complete slap in the face of everything I've been trying to achieve. And then I come up in a voice call with a friend called Finn, who's going to show up 2 more times in this talk later. We decide to make the ugliest game possible, and we call it Losa Mina, because it's the opposite of the Mosa Lina, which is this pristine thing that everyone loves. So this is the Losa Mina. It's basically just a copy of Cruelty Squad, but as a platformer. So I make some tools, and I throw them in the level, and I don't give a shit how you solve the level. I don't care. It's really nice, and we make this in 2 hours or something in a voice call where we're definitely very sober. And then, I did some other stuff. This is a thing that will happen a lot of times in this talk, that we make progress on the game that actually releases, that I'm talking about now. Some progress happens, and then I just do something completely different for months, In this case, I start work on Producer 2021, and I also am smoking and drinking and eating a lot, so I have a small stroke. At this point, I'm living like a hermit. I'm living very isolated. I'm never going out. I'm never meeting people. I'm a little, like it's the pandemic and everything. But even before that, I was just very in my little box. So I have a small stroke, which means I need to go to the hospital. And they tell me yo, start walking. You're gonna die. So I do that, and I experience nature, and it's actually really nice. And then randomness strikes. This is a really, really random event. This is not something you can plan for. Atari buys the Wombat IP. They just have it now. It's theirs. And that means I have money, which is pretty nice. And I use that money to crawl up my own ass. I use that money to just follow my random interests. I'm like, okay, I have to start hiking. I have to get more healthy or something. And I shouldn't get stressed. I just do whatever interests me. Whatever catches my interest, I just follow that. And I can do that because of the random money from Atari. And so I'm really getting obsessive about Dishonored 1 and 2. Like I play each game like multiple times. I write essays. I like break down the structure. I go really, really crazy on those two games. And come to the conclusion that if this seems unconnected to the game, that's because it is. I'm just following random stuff, you know. Dishonored 1 is all about reactivity and immersion. Like the game really, really cares about how you play, and then it reacts to it. So it changes the world in response to your action. And I'm like, wow, this is so cool. And if I play perfectly, the world is going to be super nice. So I'm trying to play perfectly, and I'm constantly like, as soon as I make a mistake in Dishonored 1, I reset. And I try again, and I try again, until I'm like this perfect stealth assassin who never gets seen. And then I play Dishonored 2, and Dishonored 2 doesn't care about that at all. Dishonored 2 is about giving you as many options as possible. It's a huge sandbox. It doesn't really react to what you do, but it gives you a lot of abilities that you can use in a lot of ways. So I'm really, really, like for a month or two, I only think about Dishonored. And then randomness strikes again. You know, I'm just deep up my own ass. I'm really, really in this research hole. And then 1 year after Quamp releases, I get commissioned to make a micro game. Like someone approaches me and is like, hey, do you want to make a micro game? We give you like $1,000, and the theme is absurd. So I have to make an absurd micro game just at the time when I'm really obsessed with Dishonored 1. You cannot plan this, you know, this is not like something that you can put in your like plan for life or whatever. So I remember Losa Mina, this like really disgusting platformer that doesn't give a shit, and I'm like, okay, let's make a sequel to that, and let's call it Mosa Lina, because I like to jumble the words around. So it starts with physics. It has to start with physics because the game, the first one is very rigid, you know, like you can throw a box and then it's there, kind of. But with physics, you can have a character that can kind of like jump off ledges, and it's all, you know, you get the analog qualities that, in my Dishonored 1 research, I think a lot about like analogness, like how many angles a piece has and whatever. So physics character controller, and then quickly I add the interactions, just throw these little boxes, and then, you know, you can put a zone that reverses gravity, and suddenly it goes like, boom, you know, wow. That's really cool. And now you can, the boxes are floating, you can push them, you can throw them very far, and then you can jump on them. So it has a lot of possibilities with very, very little objects in the game. And I'm like, wow, this is really cool. So I will now replicate the Cruelty Squad structure from before. I'm still, you know, I have this like kind of absurd game where the levels are not really connected to the solutions, but I decide to copy the structure of Cruelty Squad, where you have this money. For some reason, I added money, and then you can, if you die, let's see, yes, you go to a shop and you kind of like buy items that you then go into the level with. And the problem with money is that you need to build an economy, and I suck at mathematics, I really don't like it. So as a random thought enters my head, which is like, why not make it all random? Why not just randomize everything? And the thing is that this thought is not just coming out of nowhere. It's actually, I did a lot of archaeology. Like I really went through all of my GIFs and all of the stuff to figure out where the parts of this game actually come from. And the randomness comes from a bunch of games I made like years ago. I made a game called Ord, which is built on, which is a copy of Reigns actually, where you just draw random cards from a deck. And then I realized, oh, if you take these random cards you draw, and there's a little story on the card, so you play the card and you throw it away. And then like, oh, what if you draw a random card, but instead of a little story, it's a platforming level. That's like the big switch. It's very obvious in hindsight to look like, oh, you just have a bunch of levels and you pick one of them randomly. But the process there is actually like making Ord and then making another game called Spacebar, which whatever. Let's not get into that too much. And I also, because I played Dishonored 1 and 2 a lot, and I played Disco Elysium a lot, which is built on randomness as well, where the skill checks kind of like remove content from the game. So they are very, very okay with building stuff. Like like in Disco Elysium, they write this beautiful text, and then they throw the dice. And if you have bad luck, you don't get to see the beautiful text. You know, like they worked on it for months, and it's just not there. And that is really like a cool concept to be like, oh, I can just make stuff that I really care about, and then not show it to people. That is kind of like the punishment you get when you make something that's really random, that maybe people don't see it, but at the same time it becomes really powerful because you don't have to order it in a linear structure. So this is the randomness that I put in Mosa Lina. It's a complicated concept, so I will, this is the base of the game that eventually releases in the future. It's just everything is random. You just have a bunch of levels, and then you pick one of the levels, and you play it. And if you beat it, you throw it away. And then you have only 8 levels in the pool. And then you play it, and if you don't beat it, you put it back. And so through this dynamic, through this very simple set of rules, you get a very crazy dynamic where if you just randomly pick levels, and they are all very hard, you will not beat them, and you put them back. But then one of the levels is super easy, so you pick it, and you play it, and you throw it away. And suddenly there is less levels in the pool, but they are the harder ones. And so the easiest level, kind of like statistically speaking, is the first to get removed from the pool. So the level becomes progressively harder as you keep playing. But then the really crazy thing is, because there is less levels, you see them more and more often. Like statistically speaking, they prop up in a higher frequency, which means that you can practice them more often. So the harder levels that remain are also the levels that you get to know the most. So it's a very strange dynamic. It's like a positive and a negative feedback loop all wrapped up in one crazy thing. And it's just this, it just comes from this idea, let's just throw all structure out of the way. And then of course, instead of buying the tools with money, like in Cruelty Squad, we also just go completely random. You know, we just say whatever, we just pick those tools and we don't care how they fit to the level. By not checking, you open up a space that really allows a lot of creativity. So this game is really about learning how the tools work and then having to use them in levels that you didn't choose them for. And that pushes you to use them creatively. Like the game basically is forcing you to always think on your feet, to always improvise, to never be really 100% comfortable. And that looks like this. This is the first version, 2022, like 2 years ago. I made it in like a week or so. Oh, there's a timer. I'm talking for half an hour already? Holy shit. Sorry? Oh, thank God. Okay, thank you. So this is how the game looks. And you have this screen where you see the levels and you see the tools, and you just get random stuff. And when you play through it, the game ends, and it's just over. And that's the commission, you know. And I move on, you know. Like I said before, like I make this thing. This is essentially on a basic level. This is the game that releases 1 year later or 2 years later. This is pretty much in terms of game design. This is pretty much the finished project. But then I do other stuff. Like I said before, I was going hiking and I was appreciating nature and I was realizing, oh, I'm so like isolated. I need to go out into the world more. I need to like do more stuff. So I take lots of walks. I went on my first vacation in 5 years. I actually come by here and get a huge sunburn on the beach. And after the vacation, I finished the visual novel I was working on. And while I finished the visual novel, I find a kind of strange, deep inner peace, where before I was super anxious and nervous all the time and kind of like really on edge for most of my life. Now, in this period, this is a different topic, but I find a kind of like center in myself and I get more comfortable with myself. And I decide to spend the next year like really going out into the world. The pandemic is also ending, so I'm kind of like ending. But I decide to like go into the big wild world. And then randomness strikes again. You know, I'm not planning on picking up Mosa Lina again. It's a thing I made. I'm sometimes thinking about it, sometimes making little prototypes in this direction. But I wouldn't have made this game if it wasn't for like the third complete random incidents at this point. So it's been 2 years, it's early 2023, 2 years since Quamp released. I'm traveling through Argentina because I'm going out into the world. And the Rabbit residency in Germany accepts me. So this is like a residency program where you go for 1 month to a house in Germany with other developers and make games. Sadly, they didn't get funding this year. If they ever get funding again, apply. They are super nice. And it's just cool to hang out in a house with people. And so I apply, I go there and I decide, okay, now they need a project. And I go there with a different project and it's a huge mess. And I switch in the last minute to Mosa Lina, which is the prototype that is the most developed, which I feel like I can actually make something with. And so this is where the production begins for the complete commercial game in 2023. And the game releases actually 6 months later. This is like the fastest production for a commercial game I've ever done because I've been thinking about the game for 2 years. And I've made these prototypes and then I've made another prototype. And in between, I am sometimes thinking about it. You know, like this kind of like slow process where this is a really valuable kind of thinking, I think, where if you have time, you can just ponder implications. You can go really abstract, you know, like if I would try to explain any of this to anyone, they would say I'm a hippie or something, you know. But this kind of like really deep level of engagement with the idea of randomness, like what does it mean, you know? And so this kind of thinking just happens slowly. It's not something you can force. It's not like you can sit down and be like, I want to relax now, so the thoughts can come into my head as they should, you know? It doesn't work like that. It's like you go in the shower and suddenly you solve a problem you have for the last 2 weeks. On a large scale, just like kind of like not forcing stuff allows it to go into a kind of background process in the head. And so there's a lot of thinking already when I start the production of Mosa Lina. I'm actually way too fast now that I think about it. So, like in the talk, not in the development. So the Mosa Lina development, the core loop of the game has been done for a year. Like I said before, this randomness, like you have these levels and you take one, and then if you beat it, you throw it away, and if you don't beat it, you put it back. That is the core. That never changes. Now it's just about making the full game, which is like 5 months or something of like active work in many different areas. The most important one is to have a lot of tools in the game. So because this is a thing where this is something I learned while I was making mechanics for Quomp and all of my previous games, where if you have a bunch of physical properties, you can just kind of connect them to actions and reactions, right? Like if I press a button, that's an action, and then an object spawns. And if the object hits the floor, it gets larger, and that's another like action, reaction, trigger, you know? But then you can make something, if it hits a wall, it grows and it stops moving, you know? And that's a new tool. And so I'm doing a lot of these prototypes. Like this is the basic ones, it's just like, you just shoot a box, and now there's a box, you know? But then what if the box had a little bouncy pad on top of it and was also really interested in falling over all the time? Or what if the box was actually a circle and floats up a little bit, you know? And because it's all parsed through the same physics engine, all of these basic shapes and basic interactions all interact with each other. So you can throw the ball into the mushroom, and you can stack the crates on top of the platforms from the bottom right, and all of that stuff. But all of these here are kind of like the basic shapes and the basic tools that just kind of come very quickly. And then, you know, that's not enough. I have to keep making more tools because I need a large pool of random tools so that you're always kept on your toes and you always have to learn. So the next big step is the modifying tools, to realize that, the tiles in the level themselves can be modified, you know. Everything you spawn is a physics object, so you can make it stop or start moving. And then there's a bunch of stuff that happens from that. Like there's a lot of experimentation with rotation and like lots of things. These two survive. And then I make a frog. This is probably the best move I ever made. It's like, it's a little frog. Like, this is the most complex one in terms of code because it has a little like decision making. And it really makes the level more alive because there's a second actor that's moving. And that's really, really powerful. Like from a gameplay perspective, having this like agent of chaos in the level really adds a lot of potential for like crazy shenanigans. And I'm spending a lot of time trying to make another one of those, like something that is as cool as the frog. And I never really manage, but I spend a lot of time on that. And then, you know, I'm making some more tools, but slowly I'm running out of stuff to do. There's just a certain baseline amount of physical interactions that come easy, that come natural, that you can kind of like quickly put into stuff. And then it becomes more abstract, right? Like you have to make these teleportation zone thingies where you can kind of like remove, it's just a strange thing, you know? But I'm running out of possibility space, essentially. There's like 2D platforming space. Like if you play a lot of 2D platformers, you realize that all of the kind of like things, how they work as a baseline is always the same. You know, objects can move up and down, they can rotate, they can appear, they can disappear, but there's a finite amount of things you can do. And I'm scratching that with the tools. Like at some point the tools, there's just no way to go. So I'm also thinking about obstacles, like putting stuff in the game that is moving, like with the frog, just makes it much more visually appealing and much more, like you want to touch it much more if it has these little things. So I come up with these tentacles, which are, I think, the coolest thing in the game from that sense. And then, you know, like, okay, so we can do more mechanical stuff like ropes and clamps and kind of like connect multiple objects together to create these larger structures, which is quite nice. And then, then I'm starting to kind of like run out of ideas again, and I'm just trying out stuff. These are curses, where basically, because I'm playtesting the game a lot, and I'm getting bored, Like I know all the levels, I know all the tools, so I want more different stuff. So I make a system that just randomly eats tiles from the game. So every time you start the level, it's a little bit different. And this is supposed to make it more interesting to me, but it never really feels right. And then I'm experimenting with procedural generation, like making these large levels where you have these blocks of but this also doesn't feel right, because the joy of solving a level in Mosa Lina is based on the fact that the level itself is kind of always the same. If you get it, it's kind of always the same thing, and you just get different tools and have to get creative with the tools, instead of the levels always being this like big porridge of different stuff. And then I'm going off the deep end again. I'm like, oh, what we actually need is like Rain World style, physically simulated creatures with like agency that want to eat you. So this is, I just love that type of stuff, but it makes no sense for the game. This has nothing to do with what I'm trying to actually make here. And then the levels, like making more levels for Mosa Lina is the constant struggle. It's a huge resistance for me to make the actual levels that go in the game, but it's very quickly. You just drag some stuff and it's kind of working. So the levels are a problem, but not a big problem. The big problem of Mosa Lina is the structure. This is where I really, really, really kind of like lose a lot of months of time, because like the base randomness really works. Like this kind of like radical notion, like it's a kind of rejection of puzzle game design. All the puzzle game design school tells you to make really considerate tutorials, and everything is very ordered and makes a lot of sense. And what I'm proposing here is to just make everything random, so nothing makes any sense. But that really works as a gameplay thing. So the rejection of the convention really works. But then for some reason, I want to have progression. I get scared of making a large game that is built completely on randomness. I feel like it's too much. Like people will not buy it. People will not like it. People want progression. Every game has a kind of like meta progression system. There's always progress. There's always a currency you can earn. All of the games have this. So I need to have it too. And this is where I really go crazy, because I start with like a Mario overworld structure, where I'm like, oh, you have these like levels, and then you go through this world, and then I'm like, oh, actually it's about this story, and you beat these levels, and then you get this like kind of like these vistas where you travel through this barren landscape, and it's very like alien and cool. And then actually it's like, no, it's a branching structure, and it responds to how you do in each level, and then it's about the performance of the stuff. This is the system I use in the background to govern the progression of the game. It's a strange semi-programming language I made up, which there's no time to talk about, sadly. So this is I'm just going completely crazy. I'm making structures and structures and structures and structures, and I throw them away again. And then I'm like, oh, what we actually need is NPCs, Like when you get to the end of the game, there's these like creatures who tell you have to play in a specific way to get to the next NPC. So there's this progression of NPCs and all of this stuff, and I'm just, at this point it's August. And the game has to release in October, because I signed up for the Steam Next Fest with the explicit purpose. Like the Steam Next Fest gives you a lot of wish lists, and the wish lists, like I'm working without a publisher and everything, so this is self-funded, and I have to make, this has to sell or I run out of money. I forgot to say that, yeah, this game has to sell or I'm broke. And so I have to release after the Steam Next Fest in order to get the wish lists to have a good chance at selling a lot of stuff. So I have to finish the game, but I'm just completely lost in making these like NPCs and these strange branching structures. And then I go really crazy, because I decide what the game actually needs is reactivity. Remember from Dishonored 1, where the game reacts to how you play? Now, 2 months before release, I believe, oh, this is the system I need to add. This really makes a lot of sense. So you can see all of the different versions of the same level here, where like, if you die from falling off the screen, the game will put more platforms in the bottom, Or if you collect all the coins very quickly, the game will spawn more coins. And so the game is kind of like responding to how you play. It's a very complicated system. It's a very complicated tracking of actions. It's useless. It's fucked up. Who needs this? Nobody. And then Finn, like I said before, there's this guy I had the voice call with when I made the very first prototype. This is Finn. He's a co-designer. We made Ort together. And we just sometimes chat about game design. So we, again, randomly, we just have a call. And I tell him about what's been going on, and he says, dude, you're crawling up your own ass. Like, this is not the actual game you're making. Like, you're just inventing, you're just scared of releasing a thing that already worked because there is all of these ideas of progression and conventional stuff that you have to do. So this is the moment where I decide to do a radical reduction. Like 1.5 months before release, I decide to just radically slash the game down into its base components. But I have to do a brief intermission here, because during this development, you know, like before, like it started in March 2023, and now we are in like August 2023. And in that time, I kind of went a little bit crazy. Like I started to really go out into the world. Like I was on vacation last year, and I was in Argentina, and I was in Germany. I'm meeting all of these people, and I realized, hey, you know, it's nice to be around people, and I don't have to be scared. So I went dancing in a club for the first time in my life. I started to go barefoot in the city. Maybe it's obvious, but I'm cutting my own hair. I started dating, and I just went crazy. Like I felt a really big energy to kind of like just go insane and really do whatever I wanted to do without really considering the stuff I was afraid of for a large part of my life. So I'm throwing a lot of stuff away. And in this moment, I'm also doing a kind of radical reduction of Mosa, where I throw a lot of stuff away. So I listen to a lot of John Mouse. I don't know if you know him. He's a guy who's standing on the stage and he's hitting himself on the head and he's screaming like crazy. And I listen to his set on repeat kind of while it's super hot, and it's just an insane time. I'm saying, okay, let's reject all conventions. There's going to be no structure in Mosa. There's no progression. When you beat the game, you get nothing, you know? There's no governing principle. There's no levels, there's no worlds or something, there's no stages. You just get some random levels and you play them, and then it's over. And you don't get anything as a reward, you know? It's not like you unlock more tools or like you unlock more levels or you unlock more stages or whatever. Like the whole game is accessible to you from the start without any barriers. In fact, there's no achievements, you know. It would have made a lot of sense to say like, oh, if you shoot a fish into the spike trap and then you do a backflip, you know, you get an achievement. The game is perfect for that kind of stuff. But I was like, no, like there's no way to encourage you to play in a specific way. There's just nothing guiding you. All you have to do is take these tools and figure out how to use them. And if you can't do that, you know, you can just re-roll. You can just get a new set of tools at any time you want. And there's no saves. So nothing you do is saved. If you just quit the game, you have to start again from the next time. If you win the game, you just start in the exact same way, you just start again. But then also, if you set in the settings that you want the music to be quiet, and you close the game, and you open it again, the settings are not saved, because there's just no save system. It's just every time the exact same executive that always runs the exact same code. It's like a very clean slate. It's a kind of, yeah, it's just nothing saved. It's just a weird little thing. The only thing that matters is that everything is truly, completely random. So there's no safeguards, you know? I'm not checking, oh, you already got like the frog 100 times, so you maybe are sick of it, you know? No. And I'm not checking, oh, you never got the spears. You played for 20 hours, you never got the spears, which is technically possible. I should give them to you. No, there's nothing. Every time you get the same blank slate. And this feels really deeply right. Like I feel a strong sense of kind of spiritual alignment. This is again the part where I become a little hippie. But it's like it feels like this is really kind of the culmination of the rejection of the game design I was doing before. Like with Quomp, it was all very linear and very smooth and very nice. And now it's the complete opposite. It's an actually complete rejection of all of that. And then I travel through Europe without shoes because I'm a little bit insane at that time. And then I come back from the vacation. I meet a lot of you without shoes at that point, actually. That's why I'm highlighting that. So then I'm putting out a pre-demo before I leave for a vacation. I send out a pre-demo to a lot of people where I ask them what they think of this like new reduction mode and whatever. And they really like it. And so, okay, we polish it up, and there's a lot of work here. Like I don't want to say as if that's just like something you just do out of the hand. Out of the Ärmel. I don't know how to translate that idiom, whatever. It's not something you just do, it's a lot of work. But I've done this like a couple of times. I've released like 5 games or something at this point. So it's like, okay, we push through that and we put it on for the Steam Next Fest. And the Steam Next Fest takes 7 days, and then after the Steam Next Fest, the game releases. The moment the Steam Next Fest ends is the first legal day where you can release a game that participates in the Steam Next Fest. So that's what we're going to do. And so we get an insane amount of feedback in 1 week. Like thousands of people play the game and all send me their opinions, and I'm dying, you know, like it's like I'm getting slapped left and right with feedback. It's really, really intense. And then again, randomly, I'm cooking dinner and I'm watching this stream from someone named SD89, who is a streamer and a game design consultant, and he's playing the game, and he has a very forceful way of speaking. Like he's like this kind of like American streamer style where he makes a point and then he repeats it 10 times. And I'm just like, I'm barely holding on. I'm super nervous and fucked up from all of the work. And he's just screaming like, oh, this needs procedural generation. This needs procedural generation. And I'm taking psychic damage from that. But I'm also thinking like, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense. Like the game eventually, like with the stuff I was trying to do, eventually you know all the levels. Eventually you know all the tools. And then the randomness kind of stops working. So it's like, he is right. But I already tried procedural generation and that shit doesn't work. But there's something else I can do. And there's a emoji that is like this, which is like, so like 4 days before release, I decide, oh, now is the time to make a new major system. Like I'm going to just write a completely new set of code, put it in the game and release that. This is a gamble. It's very crazy. So this is it's about the last level where you say, okay, you have, remember, like you pick the levels out of the bag and then one of them is remaining. And that is the level you have had the most trouble with, you know? Statistically speaking, that's the level that you've struggled with the most. You've picked it up and you couldn't beat it, so it gets put back. And then it's the last level of the game. And as soon as it becomes the last level of the game, bam, you know, you put some stuff on the side of the last level. You put extra content on the side, which is an additional randomizer on the last level. So let's say you have this last level and you have really struggled with it, and then you play it, and you know the pieces that come onto the last level on the side, like chunk, make it a lot easier. You know, suddenly there's a stair or something that you really need, or a platform that is really useful. So suddenly, randomly, the last level becomes a lot easier. But again, there's no safeguarding, there's no checking. I'm just pushing it there, whatever. Who cares? And then in the same way, it could make the last level insanely difficult, almost impossible. And I'm just not checking for any of that. This is probably the most complicated code I ever wrote in my life because it needs to like take a level, whatever. It's a bunch of bullshit. So it's a huge gamble to put this out, and we just release it. And it's a huge success immediately. It's very crazy. This is like the biggest success I ever had. We sell 10,000 units in a month. Game Maker's Toolkit makes a video, which is pretty insane. It's his like least watched video ever, but whatever. He made a video. It's good. And we don't do any marketing. Like as usual, at this point, I'm super burnt out. I'm super fucked up, and I sent like one marketing email, and I think I write under Donkey, Video Game Donkey, under one video I write like, hey, you should play Mosa, Lina. That's like the marketing outreach I do. But the game actually sells because people organically pick it up and really like it because it is such a radical rejection of everything they have played so far. It's this complete, you know, it doesn't have progression, it's very random, it's just a slap in the face of all this puzzle design stuff. And so they pick it up and they really like it and they just play it on their own without me having to do anything. I'm very grateful to those people. They basically really sold the game a lot. But then the biggest thing is players recommending the game to each other. Like people playing the game, liking it because it's so different, and then checking on like everyone has a weirdo friend, you know, someone who's a little bit strange, and they're like, oh, this guy will love this game, and then they, you know, and then that person buys it, and they have like 5 weirdo friends, you know, and then it spreads in the weirdo circles. That's what happened. Like we got a lot of people from the Rain World Discord where people are really doing crazy technological challenges and they really crazy platforming, whatever. So people recommend it to each other. We also have a Discord server, which is also complete anarchy. There's no moderators. There's no like nothing. It's just we haven't had to ban a single person yet. It's really cool, and this is really satisfying. Like this release because I want to make new things. I want to make things that nobody has done before. But I also need to live. You know, I need to pay rent. So this is both at the same time, which is really fucking crazy. It's really cool. I'm very happy. It's like, wow, I feel vindicated. Like years of saying, oh, there is something new you can do. You know, you don't need to put all of this progression mechanics in the game. And it actually turns out you can sell it a little bit. I mean, 10,000 units, it's $5 a month, you know. Nobody's going to get rich of that, but I can live off of it, which is a big success. And then I'm holding on, you know, like I promised a bunch of updates. I was saying like, oh shit, you know, because of the random nature, because everything is just tools and levels, it's very disconnected. You can just put new content in the game very easily. So I say, oh, you know, I will just do these updates and I will just make new content. Because why not? You know, this is the service. Again, actually, yeah. Again, I'm falling for the kind of trap of the convention where it's like, oh, it's games as a service, you know. You make a game and then you release an update and an update and an update. This is what everyone is doing, so I should do it too. But then luckily, Rolling Barrel joins the team. I had to cut a bunch of slides out about the team members who join and how the collaboration process is working. There's Silkersoft and Luc Allemond who are doing artwork and music at all the time. But their role is more like supplying, you know, like I say like, oh, I need this picture and they provide the picture. Rolling Barrel is the person that joins and that really takes a deep, daily active interest in maintaining the project. He's a coder, he's from Russia. And he made a level editor for the game, which is really, really difficult because I'm using Construct 3, which is this strange technology that is very walled in. But he reverse engineered it. I don't know, it looks like machine code. It's just zeros and ones. He made a really complicated program and he managed to get Mosa into Steam Workshop integration, which then allows people to make like really crazy levels and really insane stuff and really keeps the game going for a long time. So Rolling Barrel saves my ass also because he's doing bug reports, you know, he's doing the Linux version, he's doing all of the technological stuff where I'm really, really bad. Like I can barely ship this game out, you know, and then he's kind of like building a ship under it and makes sure it doesn't just sink in the ocean. But then we start pushing the updates, you know, like the turtle update, which adds a little turtle that falls from the sky, and if it falls out of the level, you lose. So you have to keep it in the screen. Because it's like, oh, I have to, you know, people really like the frog, so I will put the turtle in because the turtle is cute. And the game, you know, like people are getting really, really good at the game, so I need to put more challenges in. And then I take a vacation in December because I'm really burned out, like I can't really focus. I also just moved back into the city, so there's a lot of new stuff to do. And then I do the backflip update, which was the biggest mistake in all of this, where I decide, oh, what would be really cool is if you could do a backflip. And then I just spent like a month trying to code that, and it never really worked with the code, but I had already announced it because I was able to produce a really funny GIF and posted it on Twitter, and then I was like, oh shit, now I'm stuck with this, but it feels like shit, and it doesn't add anything. It just makes the game really, really hard to control, and it's a horrible thing. And then, you know, we keep going. We add more and more stuff, more tools, more levels, more modifications, we call them, like more random stuff. Like sometimes a worm will fall from the sky and try to eat you. Sometimes parts of the level will disappear. Like I'm trying to keep the game more dynamic. I have in my head this vision of like Mosa as this super random game. It has to be as random as possible. And then I announced the biggest update. You know, I'm like, oh, okay, we have all of this stuff, but none of it is really substantial. None of it really works, to be honest. But now we will make a huge update, but I am dying. Like I am really, really not okay at this point. Because what is happening is dating apps and drug abuse. I moved back into the city, and like when I said before, I was going out into the world more. That is where that becomes kind of pathological, where it becomes a kind of like a thing I have to do in order to maintain a sort of status of well-being or something, where I kind of like push it way beyond what I actually need. I just kind of like get obsessed with various activities I will not discuss further. And for some reason I can't concentrate anymore. It's like my brain is completely shot through. Like normally when I would work on a game, I would go on these hikes and I would think about projects, and now I was thinking about completely other stuff. Like my background processes in the head completely taken over by the stuff I had been trying to do for the last years, like the stuff I had been like wanting to do for a long time, and now it completely took over my life. So this is 2024. The updates don't feel good, and they never take enough time to iterate on them. You know, I'm holding on to this strange ideal version of the game in my head, and then I have the last call with Finn, who has shown up a few times already, always delivering words of wisdom, and now he is telling me to stop. You know, it's like what you're doing doesn't make any sense. You just have to stop. Like this is not helping the game at all. And so I make the director's cut update, which is an update that removes the previous updates. It's a kind of absurd move, so I feel okay with taking content away from the people. But it's really nice. It's like this is like this little joke is like a way to get out of doing the big update. It gives me the freedom to kind of be like, this has to stop. Let's fucking cut it. I hand the game over to Rolling Barrel, who is doing technological maintenance and is doing some tech stuff that we can talk about at some point in the future, maybe. And I feel immediately like a weight has been lifted off of my shoulders. I can think again, I can breathe again. It's like when you take off a backpack that is really heavy and you totally forgot how heavy it was, and then you feel like you can fly because all of the extra, like it feels like that. And that feels really good, so I start cutting down on everything else I'm doing. You know, I stop everything. I go into a complete kind of like pushing everyone away, going into a complete shut-in mode. I'm basically facing the void of post-release depression. Like for the last 2-3 weeks, I've just been watching romantic comedies and eating sausages. Like, I've just been doing nothing. It's like this post-release depression, essentially. And then some time passes, and now I'm doing a talk in Malaga. Whoa, what the fuck? I'm not. So this is the making of Mosa, Lina. Is the process of rejecting conventions, like getting really deeply involved with making a very conventional puzzle game, and then afterwards completely throwing all of that away. So we come up with a new thing, but then, oh no, okay, there's only 4 minutes left. It's a perfect time for my voice to start dying. So we come up with a new thing, and it's new, and it's cool, and it works, but then I get scared, and I'm like, oh, this is too new maybe, you know, maybe this is too fucked up. Maybe I need to put a more conventional structure around it. I need to kind of like keep it safe so that it can sell, so that people will like it. And then in the last possible moment, I stop with that. Oh, wow. And do a huge gamble. Do a huge gamble on a new thing where it's like, okay, and now after all of this conventional fear, I throw it all away and I go one extra step. You know, I do the level code, which is really insane, and that really works. So then I kind of like keep gambling, you know, with the updates. I'm like, oh, the last time I just pushed some code out without really testing it, it worked perfectly fine. It was a huge success. So I can keep doing this and keep doing this and keep doing this. Of course, eventually, you know, you're going to lose. It's just I got lucky or whatever happened. So I keep gambling until I collapse. In essence, it feels like the creative process that has governed my life for the last 2-3 years is one of obsessing over something, getting really obsessive about a specific thing, and then letting it go. But the thing with obsession is that you can't force it, right? Now I'm standing here and I'm like, okay, after this talk, I don't know what I will do next. Like, who knows what my life will bring? I just have to stay open to being interested in stuff. I can't sit down and be like, now I will get really obsessed with Super Mario Kart, you know? Because that will lead to some sort of outcome in the future where I make a game that allows me to make a living. It doesn't work like that. Like, I can't sit down and be like, I want to relax. That just doesn't happen. You can't force interest. But maybe this is the one thing I can learn to do, that I can take away from all of this. Maybe I can learn to let go of obsessions before I collapse. Thank you for your time.
Ahora, si alguien quiere hacerle alguna pregunta en inglés a Josh, pues puede hacerlo. Que levante la mano. No.
Okay, I have a question. Did you ever try to test if the game was beatable with any tool, or did you? It was like, okay, this is random, so if it doesn't, then we go on.
No, I didn't. Especially, but you can. I was kind of confident that it would be kind of okay, because I got really good at the game while playing, and then I was like, okay, most of the levels I can kind of beat, you know. But I didn't really care that much if it was always possible. But then the big insane move was the boss levels, where you make where you put the extra stuff on the sides. that was just completely, like, I had not enough time to check that at all. And they are sometimes really, really difficult. But I have genuinely, like, there are some people who are saying, oh, this level is impossible. But then you look and they have played the game for like 2 hours. So it's probably possible. And then you see reviews from people who have played 200 hours and they say that they have never encountered a level they couldn't beat. So with enough skill, I guess everything is possible.
So another gamble, right?
Sorry?
Another gamble. Another gamble, like, well, yeah. I just got lucky, I guess.
Yes, yeah. I forgot to mention that, yes. But it was like, whatever.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. How can you trust a random Russian guy to hand over your game? Did you give the source code entirely to him? Is he your friend or?
Sorry.
Are you
how do I trust? How do I trust Rolling Barrel?
Is he your friend or did you meet him online?
We are in some Discord together for some time.
Okay.
But it was a huge trust. I was just like, whatever. He has access to all the financial data and everything. We totally have a contract.
Okay. So you know are a team and split earnings or whatever.
Sorry?
You know are like a team of two.
Yes, it's a team of 2 people who are kind of thinking about the game, but there is 2 collaborators from the beginning who are making artwork and sound as well. Cool. But they deliver everyone is getting revenue share in the team, so everyone is getting a part of the cake for a long time now. But Rolling Barrel is getting a pretty large part of the cake.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, but it's in general, it has just trusting. Like, I was able to trust him because he was really obsessed with making a level editor for Mosa, Lina. And he spent like a month or 2 working on it before I had even released the game, like preparing the technology and everything. He really wanted to do it. So it's a kind of vibe thing, I guess, where if you meet someone who's really obsessed with something, you can generally assume they're a nice person, because unless the obsession is with making money. If the obsession is with making money, then be careful, but every other obsession, they are losing money following their dream. So.
Okay, we have another question.
Hi. So you have a level editor in the game. So you have community levels.
I'm sorry. Can you speak a little bit louder? Like
yeah.
really loud?
Can you hear me now?
A bit better. Yes.
Okay. So you've got a community. You've got community levels. You've got a level editor. Do you have any sort of moderation tools?
No.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
But so far, everyone is super nice. Like it's really.
Hi.
Yeah, like we didn't have to ban anyone.
Sorry. Hi, I have a question. I arrived a bit late, so maybe I missed it. How do you come up with this idea? How do you come up with the idea of, okay, fuck it, I will go and make a completely random game?
It's because of interest in a lot of games. Like, yeah, you missed it.
Sorry.
All good. I was looking very closely at Dishonored of the immersive sim, and then I got a commission to make an absurd game, and I have an old prototype where I make a Cruelty Squad platformer. And then I also work with randomness and think about randomness a lot because of Disco Elysium and game I make, which is based on randomness 2018. So it's a lot of things coming together.
One additional question. Have you ever or did you make a tool that creates assets with machine learning or something like that?
No,
that could be interesting.
No.
Okay.
Hi. So first of all, I hope my home country of Argentina was nice and you had a good time.
Very good.
I wanted to ask first about the levels because I heard you tried going with procedural, but in the end you kind of went for like a set pool of levels. I wanted to know, did you have any kind of like design in mind for the levels where you thought like, oh, this level would go really well with this combination of tools? Like, is there like a canonical way of for the levels that you have in mind, or were they just made like these work with any kind of tools?
It was not made with any tool in mind, because also I made a lot of the levels before the tools were finished. So it was more about the principle is that it has to look unique, you know, because you draw the levels randomly. So if you don't recognize the difference between two levels that you draw randomly, the game is in trouble, because you don't feel like you're actually getting a new thing. So this is the main drive, is to make levels that look different, so that you recognize that they are different, so that you see that you are getting different stuff. And then it's like you can kind of abstract. A lot of the tools have a basic usage, which is like to go up. Basically, all of them allow you to go up in some way. And so I just have to check that, like, I don't force you to go up for too much, and then the level is kind of okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so my question is about the sound design in the game. I'm here.
Yes.
So the thing about Mosa Lina that really stood out to me is that it has a really interesting like soundtrack and sound design.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask, were you responsible for it, or did you hire a composer? Or
This is one of the slides. Yesterday I reworked the talk because it was too long, so I cut some of the slides which is kind of unfair. Mention Silkersoft. He works on Stanley Parable, the Ultra Deluxe Edition. He's a sound designer. He's also a hip hop producer. So he makes, like, I know his work from hip hop. Like, he produces some German rappers, and we wanted to collaborate for many years. And then in March 23, when I have when production starts, I ask him, and he looks at the game and he immediately has a specific mood he wants to do, and he has a very clear vision. A lot of the sound design comes really from him. And then my only contribution is The Caretaker, like The Bliss of the Empty Void or something. It's a conceptual album about Alzheimer's, which is like 9 hours long or so, and it's like this gradual descent into static, which I really like. And so he wanted to make something very alien and hostile, and I was putting this kind of like static, Lynch, whatever type stuff. But he's a real professional. He's really like, really, really good collaboration. He really comes up with stuff, whatever. Yeah, love it. But it's not. It has very little to do with me.
okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we are going to do like 2 more questions or something.
Hi. I was just really curious. I don't know if you mentioned this at the start. I was also late, so I hope you didn't.
Could you talk a little bit louder, please?
Yeah, of course.
Thanks.
So I was just wondering, what brought you to Construct 3 specifically? Because it's a really old system. It's a very simple and complicated.
It's a Spanish guy called Edu Vers. He's
Okay.
We met in 2017 at a convention, and I was using Stencil at the time, and he was saying like, you should use Construct, and I was like, okay.
And you just stuck with it. Okay.
That's I got like I just don't see any reason to switch away from it for now. The only reason would be to do 3D, but I'm really fast with it, so there's no And now with Rolling Barrel, there is a guy who can do really great tech support for it as well, to push it to different platforms and stuff. So yeah.
Una última pregunta. ¿Estamos guay? Perfect.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me.